Welcome to the Undiscovered Gems podcast, hosted by NBA legend and business powerhouse Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds.
And welcome back to Undiscovered Gems. Today we have Rachel Pezzuto. Rachel was on about a month ago and we had such a great interview with her. Rachel is a LADC1 recovery coach, supervisor to vendor to courts. The name of her company is RJ Recovery, named after her son. Rachel, welcome back. How have you been?
Wonderful. Thank you for having us back.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Glad to have you back. Rachel, I got to ask, what is LADC1? I've said that a couple times, but I really don't know what that is.
It's a licensed drug alcohol counselor, and there's different degrees. If you have a master's, you can become an LADC1, which you become a provider with insurances. An LADC2 is someone who's a case manager and they only have a bachelor's. So it's
Got it.
different degrees of levels.
All right. It's degree of levels. So why don't we start by tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what it is that you actually do.
All right, a little bit about myself. We don't have enough time. Okay. So I am, how to begin? All right, so my drugging days were 13 to 21, and I hit it hard because I had a traumatic situation. I quit drugging when I was 21, and I went to abusive relationships. The last one that I had launched me a weekend in jail because I didn't do what they said, but because of the charges, they had to hold me until I went to court. So the ex-boyfriend was smart enough to know to do it on a Friday night. Anyhow, that was my rock bottom for me in realizing I needed to love myself and to do for myself. Grace of my parents, they were a huge support system in helping me revamp my challenges and my demons. Um, and also with my sponsor and CBT therapy, which I really kind of found a niche in that. I then was a recovery coach for a while with a company that had a lot of barriers. But the
Mm,
wonderful thing was, I know COVID hit hard for a lot of people, but for me, it was God's grace of opening up my own company because the company that I worked for closed their doors. And I
mm.
opened up my doors because I had 80 clients and I wasn't going to let them go back out in the street and kind of lose them. So I opened up my own company and I've been um, right as rain, doing what I love, valuing life, living in the moment, and being a sounding board and an inspiration to people that my parents instilled in me that I get to instill in the hundreds that I work with.
Sure, sure. Clearly when people go through experiences, good or bad,
Mhm.
when you go through your experiences, if you go through them without blinders on, I gotta mention that, and you actually capture all of the education as you go through it, it puts you in a place where you become a solutions provider within the scope of your experience.
Exactly.
And I want you to talk a little bit about um, some of the things that you've done based on your experience has had a positive impact, I want to say, in your industry from your perspective. So I'm really talking about innovative thinking. Why don't you start with one or two things that you've done that has created change within your market segment?
Um, I think being true and genuine. I think that's my first and foremost. What you see is what you get. I'm a real person with real issues. There's a lot of layers to me, and I don't divulge that um, openly. It's more on a one on one basis so that my clients can kind of really see the development and how I unfold and where I've come. Um, but I think for the most part, my innovative thinking is probably, I would say I'm a dreamer. I'm conventional. I think out of the box. I love the fact that I'm ADHD and I'm always jumping around and bouncing. I'm always thinking of new ways to help somebody get out of the darkness and get into the problem and figure a solution. Yeah, life is a roller coaster. There's a lot of dips and valleys, and nobody has the answer. And like you were saying, blinders on. We always have blinders on, whether it's our defense mechanisms that try to shelter us, that we're not seeing what we're seeing. Um, that's what my company does. Is we take off the blinders and get to the root of the matter and help them to step forward with support.
Hmm. Now, in helping them step forward with the support that they may need, obviously you're doing some type of intake.
Mhm.
There's some communication, so you know what the first step might be. Um, Talk about that for a minute. Is there a initial first step for every person that you help, or does the first step change depending on their situation?
It depends on the situation because everybody comes at a different level. Some people might understand that they have a drinking problem and not really know what other avenues to kind of stop their drinking.
Hmm.
There's some people who um, are naive, thinking that their past traumas are not what affects them, that they've made peace until we kind of work the steps and get into the
Hmm.
fore. And then they can really see and sit with their resentments and their awareness to their resentments and how to manifest it in a way of flipping the negative and learning to make it a positive. For
Sure.
instance, like personally, I was raised that I was the hyper obnoxious child. They didn't have ADHD labeled back then. And
Hmm.
so I was always the black sheep, the outcast, the misfit. You know what I mean? I had tons of names. Now I call myself the underdog. I'll work the underdog. Um, and I've learned to love the ADHD and love the multitudes of thoughts that come through my head because I think so many different options for the client. Um, and I think that's become a blessing and a strength that I have now that back then I didn't see it. But it wasn't until I started doing my own fourth step and realizing, people wrote a story for me and I bought into it and I needed to write my own story. So
Right.
each client, yeah, we meet them at different levels. So there's like a general intake, series of questions and of that nature. But there's, I call it a bucket list. I ask them what their needs and their wants are. And then I kind of go from there and figure out what their needs and wants are and why they want them and what is it going to hold for them. And that's kind of how you slowly chip away. It's not like you sit down in one session and you're cured. It doesn't work that
Hmm. You're helping people with addiction, reinventing themselves. You're actually teaching people to love themselves for healing.
way. Right.
Is there ever a time where you kind of cut the cord and you say, you know what, I've done everything I can? Does that time ever happen?
Um yeah, I've had two out of the many that one was just extremely angry and it didn't matter. if I painted the red carpet and told him how to navigate to get out of the anger, he was just gravitating onto the anger. And he had
Right.
a lot of um, reasons to hold on to the anger. He just didn't know how to get out of his own way. And so he ended up packing up his car and moving down south, thinking that change of location was going to be of something. Um,
Mm.
I still think of him here and there. And then I had another one who had codependency issues. And um, I needed to break away for my safety because of
Hmm.
our codependent issues. But I sent a referral for her to work with another clinician and kind of go on that route. So yeah, there is some, but for the most part, no, I haven't had a reason to not work with anyone.
Well, if you can only name two out of countless amounts of people, you're doing a tremendous job. And not many people can say that, even with mentors or whomever. Not a lot of people can say that. Let's talk about your sober houses. First, I want to know uh, what made you start that? There are a lot of programs.
Mhm.
I'm sure there are other places where you can send uh, some of your clients that you work with.
Yes.
Why did you start your own, and what made you do that?
I wanted to build a home. My process as a recovery coach, vendor, and LADAC, I believe in the beginning, middle, and end process.
Hmm.
And I've always gotten most of my clients into sober areas that weren't the right fit. So I wanted to cultivate an environment that it was a home, that they weren't living in a cell, that they had to hold on to their toilet paper. I buy the toilet paper. So
Mm.
it's a lesser. I buy all the household needs, the pots, the pans, the dishes, so they don't have to in their room stockpile, their cups and their silverware and what have you. I wanted to build a unity that they could focus on their recovery. And a lot of sober houses that I see, some are really um, rigid in a good way, and then also in a bad way. Like
Mm.
anything, pros and cons to many of them. But I really wanted to continue that beginning and middle and end process by opening up two sober houses that will allow people to continue to grow and breathe at the same time.
Mm. I haven't asked, where do you actually work? I don't think our audience, I don't think I mentioned it. Where are your sober houses? Can you say that? Where do you work?
And Danvers is one sober house, and then the next sober house is in North Andover. It's fortitudehouse.com is our website. And me personally, I work everywhere. I have a laptop and I mostly work in my car because I meet the clients where they're at. I do have an office in Peabody on Main Street that I do my day to day. And when clients want to come meet, we go in the conference room and sit on the couch and the chairs and just kind of talk it out.
Mm.
But sometimes the clients have a real hard time getting out of their boundaries. So, like, I'll drive to Lawrence, or I'll drive to Attleboro, or I'll go to the Cape Cod and meet the clients wherever they are, and kind of just keep them secure in their boundaries.
Right. And these are in the state of Massachusetts, just to be clear.
Yes, they are. Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people may know the accent, some may not.
Cape Cod
But
adventure.
right. Um, what with the sober house, what
Mhm.
have you seen? Now you've mentioned some differences based on what you're doing versus what you've seen. So if you've tweaked your home to be different in some of the ways you've mentioned. What have your clients said? Have they noticed a difference coming to your place versus some of the other places they may have been?
Yes. We're also MASH certified. So there's um, policies and procedures in place that safeguard the client. And I think that when we do our intake process with them, they really feel a sense of um, embracing that a lot of other sober houses really haven't kind of fostered that home feeling. Um, and the clients are feeling comfortable and to do their own structure and their own routine, whether they wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, they feel that safe zone that they can do what they want to do in the freedom to delve into their recovery instead of it being forced. Okay, 8 o'clock, you have to be in the group at this time.
Mm.
They can um, schedule their IOP at night instead of during the day. It's not
Mm.
most sober houses, kick people out during the day and say you have to go out and work or do whatever. Well, work, sometimes the shift is a third shift or a second shift. So we
Sure.
really kind of cater to everybody's individual needs. And so we have an assistant manager and a house manager that kind of breaks up the day. One will take the day shift, one will take the night shift, and kind of foster their routines.
Hmm. Sounds like you're providing a responsibility to
Yes.
those who don't normally get the opportunity to be responsible because it's such a rigid program.
Right, right. And it's up there choosing what works best for them, because that's really how change happens, is knowing
Yeah.
your boundaries and knowing what's toxic to you and what to avoid. And if you're forced into a situation, you're always going to have resistance. And this way, if you open up the channels that they get to decide, then you get more with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah. No, I get it. You remind me of a conversation I had some time ago of a helicopter parent over the child, just always hovering over him or her, and the child doesn't develop, but they develop codependent relationship because they're always hovering. But when
Yeah,
you pull that away and you let the child make the mistakes and grow and get their own ideas, they become mature and they mature faster. So that's sort of the parallel of what it sounds like.
exactly.
Um, One of the three things I mentioned earlier about your work, I said loving yourself, reinventing yourself, and addiction. Those are the three areas that you work on. I'd like to unpack those a little bit. Let's talk about how do you know that someone does not love themselves, and how do you teach that?
Uh, you kind of see it in their actions and the way I usually do like a little I tell them to draw a pig. Any
You tell
pig.
them to what?
I tell them to draw a pig. So it's
Hmm.
it's a psychological development that one of the psychologists designed that kind of speaks volumes of yourself. So when you draw this pig, does it have many details? Does it have four legs? Does it have three legs? Is it facing forward? Is it facing left? Is it facing right? So how
Hmm.
you give them a blank sheet of paper and you tell them to draw it, and then it analyzes your drawing and kind of puts you, are you innovative, are you distrustful, um, are you satisfied in your sex life? Like it really breaks it down just by drawing a pig. Then before I give them the results, I'll ask them, describe yourself in 5 words. And usually most people can never get past the third. They can't think of a fourth or a fifth. So that's kind of how you know that they don't love themselves.
Mm,
And where you're breaking into the pig drawing and you kind of just open up that there's work that there's needs to be done with them. Uh,
right.
and like I said, because of my ADHD, I think outside the box. I think of different ways to open them up to see that they truly don't have self-care or that they truly don't view themselves as somebody that should occupy the same space in a room that someone else does. Um,
Mm,
and so it's getting to the root of what their insecurities are or what their fear is or what they're being dishonest with themselves and bringing those to light. And once my mother used to have this saying, when something is seen, it can't be unseen.
that's a good one.
It is. And so once you see what your weaknesses are, you can flip them and make them a positive. Just like I did, took my ADHD and flipped it from the negative that was built into me and made it a positive.
Right, right. You know, I had this thought. It was kind of humorous, and I kept it in the inside. But I got to ask you, why not draw? What is it with a pig? Why not a car, a dog, or a tree? Why a pig?
Well, because a pig, people have a different perception and they don't really put the squiggly tail or the 4 legs or they just draw a face. Um,
Or
you know,
design on the body of the
it's
pig?
design on a body. A car, you're gonna have 4 doors and 4 wheels and a roof and a top and you've got a structure of it. But a pig
Ah,
is abstract. So, you could say draw a cat, draw a dog, you know what I mean? But like drawing a pig, most people don't think of farm animals. You know what I mean? Like, but if I told you to draw a cat, you're gonna draw 4 legs and a tail. But when you say of a pig, you think of somebody that's in the muck, in the mud, in the
right,
sewage
right,
that, you know what I mean? So
right.
it's the whole abstract
Get it.
thinking to kind of get them going.
I get. Yeah, you can. Can they? Yeah, I guess if somebody drew a really pretty pig that was all dressed up,
I
that
wish
says a lot.
I wish I had my pig. My pig looks like Porky Pig, cartoon. It's a big face and a body and legs that's facing right at you. It has a long squiggly tail and but I also I am innovative in child.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's like my pig was a reflection of my energy that I have that I bring
Right.
to the table.
Now, how do you help someone reinvent themselves?
With patience and tolerance. It's slowly, like I said, you start off the beginning of finding what their weaknesses are. I tell them to make a list of their attributes and their weaknesses, and then we kind of like role play with life. If
Mm,
they're afraid of walking into a room, we walk to the door and then we put a toe in the room and then we step into the room and then we sit down in the room and we learn different techniques of whether it's evaluating their ability to kind of s- step in, unfold their
mhm,
strengths. um, Reinventing does take a lot of work and patience. And it just because you can sit there and say, I have anxiety in going to public places. Um,
mhm.
just being at the mall is not going to satisfy it. You need to sit there and kind of sit with being in a crowd of rum.
Sh
It's a gradual process, but it's like role playing in real life.
Right. Right. And when someone actually goes through the process,
Yep.
uh, I guess give us an example where you are helping someone reinvent themselves, and I guess it's after you've gone through certain processes where now you see um, the development, and you feel that this person is not just on track, but they're really making solid progress. What did they go through where you really saw like, okay, this person's really getting it?
Yeah. So what do I do? Let's see. God, I just got flooded with so many people. They begin to make the connection that the drug or drinking was just numbing themselves out.
Got it.
And so they've realized that there's more to do with life and embracing
Mhm.
life, and understanding that, everybody doesn't have their shit together. It was funny. Someone said, they don't walk around and say, "Excuse me, I'm vulnerable today." You know what I mean? But they become aware that a situation is making them vulnerable. So they analyze, what exactly is it? Is it this person in the room that's making them feel uncomfortable? Well, let's have an out. Get out of the place.
Right.
And that they have like this exit plan always in the back of their head, that if they're at the mall and it gets too chaotic for them, there's an exit door. You can just leave. You don't need to stay there. You don't need to force yourself into a situation that is going to be detrimental to your health. But like bringing that awareness that people understand, everybody goes through different stuff all the time. It's just that we don't wear it on our sleeve, and you don't need to wear it on your sleeve.
Right. I love the first thing that came out of your mouth. You said they make the connection that the alcohol or the drugs was just medicating it. That clicked because, yeah, a person realizes, no, the stuff is still there. It never left. And then they make that connection. That's awesome. Um, One last thing, the addiction piece. I want to go through that. I know every time second time talking to you, but there's so much, and then I look, and the time is just going by so fast. Addiction, really quickly. Uh, how do you deal with people in addiction? How do you move them out of that? What's your key starting that off?
To love them, to be with them,
You you love them. Okay. Okay.
to give them a support that I have their back regardless. And my team does the same thing. We nurture a bond that they know we're going to take them for all shape, walk of life that they're at, and slowly bring them into the fold that addiction doesn't need to run their life. And I think when you supply options to them of how to live a better life and how to go about it, whether it's helping them with their resume, whether it's applying that resume and finding a job that really helps them, sending them back to school, getting them food stamps so that they are not hustling to buy food, satisfying the human nature of the survival, you know what I mean? Giving them a place to live so that you're building a home for them. Um, that's how you face addiction, is by loving the person and making them love themselves and appreciate themselves.
Rachel, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you for dropping some undiscovered gems on our audience. You're just superb at what you do. I'm not just saying that. I'm sure your clients and everybody else knows that.
Thank
Your journey is impeccable. That puts you in a place to be able to do what you do. So Thank you for coming on and blessing us with your knowledge. I really appreciate it. And again, a great show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, Rachel.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.